Welcome back to another Hospitality Podcast, episode 24. No pause today because I pre-looked it up to make sure I got it right. Those of you who don't know, another Hospitality Podcast is hosted by Angel, Chris, Matthias, ACM, another Hospitality, two of which are United States veterans. Thank you, fellas, for your service. Our podcast started to really normalize the conversations around mental health. At first, obviously around police, military, and males, hence because of the three of us. And that quickly changed to females as well as moms, wives, to everybody from EMTs, first responders, to really just everyday walk of life people. Because we realized that it wasn't just us that deal with these things. It really is everybody. So like I said, our goal was really to normalize the conversations around mental health and the stigmas that go around mental health, and normalize just having conversations with people, so people really see like, oh my God, like, I'm not alone in this, and this thought and this process. It really is almost everybody that deals with some type of mental health, PTSD, anxiety, depression, grief, parenting traumas, childhood traumas, anything. In today's topic, we're actually going to end up talking about ego.
Ego. You know, we talked about how many of us have had that walk of, you know, who we want to be, what we are. And then we looked up the definition, right? Ego, the conscious sense of the self or identity, acting as a mediator between the individual and the external world, balancing primal urges and moral conscience. So I could just give you an example of what that means to me. The other day, there was a promotion ceremony, right? People were getting promoted to detective lieutenants, detective sergeants, and above. And you walk in as somebody who is kind of on that path, you know, want to see yourself succeed, move up the ranks. And, you know, I know Angel and I, and you've been a part of those conversations of why you want to be a supervisor, why you want to be a boss, a leader. What is a boss? What is a leader? And you see certain people going into the room to get promoted, and you almost feel like, what the fuck? Like, I should be there. I should be that guy. And then you start making excuses in your head for why you're not that guy, right? Oh, I'm not a good test taker. I'm not, you know, I don't like the way this is designed. I don't like, you know, that's who's going to be my boss, you know, and I feel like that's part of an ego issue, you know, because instead of looking at those people and going, hey, good for you, you know,
congratulations.
Like, congratulations.
Yeah.
You earned it. It's difficult. You know, this test is very difficult. It's not easy. I know we've taken it. Hey, Angel did a fucking great job last time. I think we had a 98, 96?
96.70. So
whatever,
yeah.
97, and it's still not good enough. Mm-hmm. So when there was a word in there, a keyword, primal, right? Going back to what that whole caveman mentality looks like, we were designed, and our brains were designed for this whole fight or flight, right? You're fighting against nature to provide for your family. And eventually with evolution, we go into different steps, right? Mm-hmm. Of where we fall in that hiring process for anything we do in life, whether it's being a friend or being a significant other. What are women looking for in men or other women? Or what are men looking for in women or other men? Whatever it is that they're looking for, it's always like based on individuals, personalities, what they bring to the table, whatever else. So I know that I had to check my ego, and Angel did too, because I texted him on the side. I was like, damn, man, you should be here getting promoted right now. Like, this should be you walking in there. That should be us. And anytime we put that concrete word should, it really does make you feel like shit, because it makes you feel like you're not doing enough. Sure enough, I said, listen, man, I should be studying more. You know, I'm not studying enough. I'm not putting enough effort. These people actually put in the effort to do what it is that was asked of them in this test. You know, I can't be like, well, I'm not a good test taker. I'm not good at reading comp. I'm not good at multiple choice, whatever. And Angel looks at me he texts me. He didn't look at me. I'm sure you were looking at me. He texts me and he goes, hey, brother, man, you got to check yourself. He goes, we're blessed. You know, we're blessed. You might not be happy where you're at, or you might not be at your final destination, but look at us. You know, we're in places. We have a job. We're making good money. We have a good career. We're able to make impact in other ways. And then in my head, like, my ego started to calm down a little bit, right? Because ego is attached to fear in somewhat, in my opinion, and from what I read. You know, it seems like the ego fuels fear of not being able to do something or accomplish something to be better. So first of all, I'm extremely proud of the people who are taking these tests and being promoted due to their test-taking abilities. In my head, a part of me is like, man, in the military, it wasn't like that. In the military, you're proving, you know, your pros and cons. You're looking at your sick time. You're looking at your leadership pros and cons they give you. Like you'll sit down with a team leader and they'll say, hey, this person is exceeding their expectations. Like their PT standards are great. Their PFT, their personal fitness test, is exceeding expectations. We think he's been doing great. Like, so they'll take a combination of things and go, this person should be promoted, right? So now I have like a weird balance of what I think a good boss or a good leader should be. And then I remind myself, it ain't up to me. I'm not the guy at the top making the rules. So, I don't know what your perspectives are on, on ego.
I think ego and envy go kind of hand in hand because
you said ego and envy.
Yeah, because I think what you kind of described sounds a little envious, but yes, it was your ego that got you to that point where you're like, I should fucking be here too. Like what didn't I do, or what did they do that I didn't do for them to be here getting promoted? And that's a little bit of envy mixed with a little bit of ego, like that should be me too, and yeah, we've been studying and I did okay in the last test. I'm cool with my
fucking 97. I mean, I think that's more than okay. You should give yourself a little bit of credit there.
I did. I feel fine with my results. I may or may not get made. I don't know. Yeah. I'm studying again for the next one, and it's just like Matthias said. In the military, it's a completely different process as to promotion and how you get promoted. And it's more than just taking a test. I do have a supervisor or a boss that says that the only reason he's a boss is because he's a good test taker. Has no qualities, at least in my opinion, has no qualities of being a good leader. But he says to his people, like, hey, the only reason I'm a boss is because I'm a good test taker. That's kind of fucked up.
It doesn't need a lot of confidence.
But that's fucked up because now you got people that could be good leaders that, like Matthias said, may not be good test takers. And that's all they have to show that they to get promoted is a test. Yeah. That's it. Like they have no other way of being like, hey, look at me. I could be a great leader. I'm not given the opportunity because I'm not a good test taker. And it's what I told you guys on another episode where you don't have to have the stripes to be a leader. Right? Like I bring it back to that episode because you don't have to have the stripes to be a leader. And again, you can ask anybody that works around me. I don't consider myself a leader by any means to any of my peers. But you hear them talking and how they talk about me, and it feels good. Like they hold me in a high regard, and that's what leadership is. Like now when they speak about certain bosses, you hear them talking about certain bosses. And they hold me in a higher regard than they do bosses. And it shouldn't be like that because I'm not a boss. I don't have the stripes, right? Like on this job, for you to be a boss, you have to have the stripes. But again, for you to be a leader, you don't necessarily have to have the stripes. You can still be a leader amongst your peers, right? You can still do the right things. You can still point people in the right direction. You can still help people become better at what they do. Unfortunately, where we're at, it's a test. It's a test, and if you're a good test taker, and I think Matthias would be a great leader, I think I'll be a hell of a fucking leader, given the opportunity. Unfortunately, it's a test, and I took it. I scored, like I said, okay, I guess, not good enough. Yeah. But I'm studying again, man, and I'm coming for those stripes. I tell my guys around me, I'm like, I'm inevitable. Like Thanos from freaking Avengers. I'm inevitable. I'm coming.
El Intocable.
It's coming.
Oh, I'm going to come.
I will get those stripes. Don't you worry. I'm coming.
But that's what I think,
and that's an ego thing. Because I know I'm fucking coming. I'm going to get that.
But actually, ego can have two different sides, right? Like you can be humble while having an ego, which is kind of like that, right? Like you have to have self-confidence while having an ego. So you're self-confident saying, I'm going to get there. But it's also being humble enough to say, well, I didn't get that spot because not that you didn't put the work, I didn't score high enough. Yeah. And that can be, it's a twofold. The way I kind of really look at ego is how do you portray yourself? Because a lot of people that have a high ego, they people won't follow them. So when you take a boss that's egotistical, right? They walk in the room, they know everything. They don't want to hear out the people that are with them. They don't want to support the people that are under them, right? They have a high ego about themselves. I know this. You don't know this. You're going to follow what I say. And a lot of people under that will look at that and go, all right, well, go fuck yourself. You do it.
Yeah.
And that a lot of times turns into a downfall, whether it's from a squad standpoint, a team, right? Like when you have somebody, look at professional athletes. So if you have somebody that's very egotistical, the team tends to not do well because the team doesn't function well around that. It's not all about you. Like this call isn't all about you. This job, this game, this sport isn't all about you. So that's where I look at ego, and how does that person portray their ego? Because on the other hand, you can have somebody that is egotistical. Listen, I know what to do, but I'm going to get us there together. Right? You can still have a very high ego and a very high portrayance of yourself while still being humble and taking that and bringing the people with you. And I think a lot of times what we see in law enforcement is almost like I know what I'm doing. We're going to do this. And it shuts off what other cops with them, right? Like, how many times have you guys looked at it and been like, oh, I'm not going to go back to that guy on that call? Why? Probably because he has a high ego. He has a poor attitude. We're going to do this my way. And you're like, well, why the fuck am I going to go help you then? I'm not going to get jammed up because you're going to make a poor decision because you know everything. And I feel, society kind of sees that with us as well. We hear people all the time, cops are egotistical. It's like, well, not everyone is. But at the same point, we kind of have to be, right? We have to be confident. We have to own a room when we walk into a room. You can't have a cop that walks in the room and goes, hey, everybody,
they're going to walk all over
Officer Haynes, right? They do. Yeah, right. You have to walk in and you have to be, in a sense, egotistical. You have to be confident in yourself.
Command presence,
reliance on yourself, and also have your team follow you. Like if you're the commanding officer, you have to have some type of egotistical or ego presence, right? You have to show that dominance so that the other cops will go, okay, we're gonna go with him. So I think ego is a very tough thing that a lot of cops don't look at themselves and say and almost check themselves. Maybe I didn't know as much as I thought. Yeah. Maybe I didn't lead this well. Let me go talk to my guys. Hey, I'm sorry about how I kind of handled the situation, how I spoke.
But that's where the ego comes into place. Correct. Because they don't want to say that, oh, I made a mistake.
Correct.
Right? Like they don't want to recognize, like maybe, like you said, maybe I didn't know how to handle that and I should have asked for help. And that's where the ego part comes. I have a question for you guys. Have you ever encountered a person, not even saying an officer, whether military, civilian job, any other job?
Yes.
Where they say they hate being spoken to by bosses? Do you find that that's an egotistical thing? Like, I'll give you my experience.
Like corrected?
I hate being spoken to, like, for doing the wrong things. Right? So I hate being spoken to. So what I tell my guys is the fact that I hate being spoken to, I try to do the right things at all times so that I don't get spoken to because I just do not like it. That's an ego thing. Like I just do not like people speaking to me in a certain way, in a certain tone. So because I do not like that, I try to do things the way it should be done. So when it's time to come back to me and give me feedback or critique or whatever it is, it's a different conversation. So I think that's a little bit of an ego thing on my part. And I hate being spoken to. So what do? I do my fucking job so that I don't get spoken to. Like, you're not going to speak to me about, oh, you didn't handle that call correctly. Well, in my opinion, I handled it correctly because I handled it to the best of my ability, But I feel confident and comfortable enough that I did do the right thing. Right. Like if I didn't do the right thing and I am being spoken to, I also do recognize when I didn't do the right thing. And I'm like, I understand. Like I get
you own up to it.
Of course, you got to own up to it.
And intent too. And intent's a big one. Like, did you do it maliciously or are you doing something, out of your good kindness of your heart? I'll be, full transparent. Obviously, you guys know me already, so you know this about me. But I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm very sensitive to receiving critiques. You guys can laugh because it's true, right? I mean, hey,
I'm laughing because he's trying to just spit his water.
Transparency is key to our listeners and viewers, right?
Yeah.
I am sensitive when it comes down to receiving criticism or somebody telling me something, because like you said, you do feel like you're doing the right thing. You're trying your best. You're putting your best foot forward. You guys are. I'm putting my whatever I got down there. But I feel what you're saying, because then if I took myself out of the situation of police world or military, right?
Yeah.
I feel like, yes, you do need those things. You need confidence, and you do need a little bit of an ego. You do need a little bit of that strength when you walk into a room. But if we were looked at differently, right, from a different perspective, a different job, let's say we go into the administrative world, right, and one of these Fortune 500 companies or whatever, would we be treated differently? Right? Would we have some of these traits that we're carrying with us from the police world, from the military, as a first responder? Would those things be appreciated, right? Or would they be overlooked, right? I've been told numerous times by civilians, like, wow, like you really know how to read a room. Like, wow, you can tell. And then I got guys like you would tell me, you don't know how to fucking read a room, right? 'Cause we're always trying to one up each other in the sense of who's better, who's stronger, who's bigger, who is a better leader, a better follower. There's people right now that if I told you, wow, I'd really like to be like that person, or I like their characteristics, you're probably like, why? Right? It's just, I've learned to look at people for who they are and what they bring to the table. And when they're genuine and when they have good intent, I like that. You know, I like that about somebody. I've seen plenty of guys who are, let's say, 200 plus, 6 foot plus, you know, ready to go through the door, ready to take, you know, charge, but they couldn't be a leader. Right. And then I know people who are under 6 foot and are 200 pounds and whatever, that I know would be a great supervisor, a great leader, boss, all of the above. Right. Because I think it does come down to like the ego thing. The bigger you get and the bigger presence you have, some people want that. Right. I see it a lot in our job where one person walks in the room and it's like, they're here. They're here. Right. Like they're just another person. Right now. Are you happy because they're here because of who they are? Or because they're a fucking bully and you're scared to challenge them? Because that's a different story, right? I feel like I've been told on this job that the only reason they do the test, the written exam, is because it's the most fair. Would you agree to that?
I would agree.
I would say
Because it would become a popularity contest other than that. Like, you could just bring your boy. Like, now I become a boss. I'm like, yo, Matthias is coming with me. Matthias is going to be a boss, right? So that's when it becomes unfair, because now you're not doing it based on attributes. You're not doing it based on work. There has to be others. If there's not a test, there has to be other things. Like there has to be interviews. There has to be merits, right? Like, how can I say this without making it sound like we have a quota? Because everybody swears that police officers got a quota. Like, you have to look at arrests. You have to look at tickets.
Just generalize production.
They have to generalize production. Like, what have you done, like, on this job, other than just be popular and be the cool guy, right? Like, we don't have a quota, guys. I promise you, there's no fucking quota.
So you hit the nail on the head, right? You said that it become a popularity contest, right? Somebody who's been in a supervision role, all right, both of you, especially with rank, what would you do differently, or what do you think you could do differently to accommodate those who say, man, like that person would be a great leader if it wasn't for that test? Or, okay, we got to do more. Like you said, it's got to be more than just a test. So it's not a popularity contest. Like, what would be your ideal, I don't want to use the word exam because that sounds a lot like written exam, right? But what would you do to neutralize the playing field for somebody to be a supervisor without just giving a written exam? Right, because to be fair, I don't know if a lot of people know what the supervisor test includes. It's not just police questions, right?
Not at all.
It's a state issued exam.
There's very little actual penal law.
Penal law, and
you got penal law, you got criminal procedural law, you got VTL, right? You got the family courts and all these other things, but you also have the reading comp, which is a majority of the grade.
That is the biggest portion.
And for somebody who's been out of college and high school for a very long time, you know, or somebody who's not the best student, let's call it, right? I don't recall a lot of the stuff that we learned in school or in college in reference to, you know, absolutes, like must, always. Those things I'm now learning about because I had to go back into studying if I want to do any good on this test. But the test doesn't necessarily just go, hey, let's test your policed abilities. Your reading comprehension falls under like some scientific, biodegradable, hydrogenation, like it's shit that police officers have nothing to do with. So what you're telling me is that we're going to put this in this test, right? The reading comprehension.
And make it the biggest portion.
To make it the biggest portion of the test.
To make it even worse.
And let's see if you can nail this. And then that's what's going to make you a leader or a supervisor or a boss, whatever these things out. What would you do differently?
I would add, and I don't know how you could implement this in, right? Because it's a state test. Having a portion of that being almost like a practical exam, I think would help out a lot because you can weigh that differently, right? Like having somebody come in, hey, here's a scenario for you. Play it out.
Yeah.
How would you go about leading? How would you go about being a boss in this scenario? 2-car 10, motor vehicle accident with injuries on a major highway. How do you respond? How do you talk to your people when you're going to it? Where do you set up cars? I think that, because again, that's leading, right? That you're going to a call. What are you going to do with your guys and girls? How are you going to make this play out? How are you going to make sure your people stay safe? How are you going to make sure the civilians stay safe and get whatever help in procedures they need to, and then get the roadway open? I think those go further than read this paragraph. What are the grammatical errors? I don't fucking know. I'm not an English teacher. I was never good at English.
Yeah.
I speak it. I can read it. Not great at writing it in a formality that you want it to be right. And I even get told that now. They're like, dude, who taught you to write? I'm like, I don't know, somebody in upstate New York. Like it's
which is why we've gone to computers for a lot of the writing reports, because of it does correct some of the grammatical issues. Mm-hmm. It does correct some of the mispronunciations or whatever you have in there, right? I mean, I'm assuming AI is going to take over a lot of this stuff, if not in the near future, in the future for sure. Report writing, you would just say something out loud. Upon arrival of the undersigned officer, complainant number 1 states complainant number 2, punch him in the face, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden AI would go, and it would just write up a report like college kids are doing it. Yeah. We see TikToks. We see the Instagram videos of them cheating, putting a little Vaseline over the camera. So they can't. You saw that? Yeah, awesome. So they could do that. I don't know if you saw that video. This
don't
kid,
have social media. So
I didn't know what this thing was, but like this girl passes this guy or the girl a Vaseline thing, and she dips her finger, puts it over the camera, so now I can't track the eyes, and she's like highlighting all the questions and putting it into AI, and AI is giving her the answer. So then she's selecting, she got 100 on the test. It shows the result.
In like 3 minutes.
And the test was done. So humans are a lot smarter than computers to many different aspects, how to get around.
Well, that's when you have a proctor looking at you through a computer.
Well, that's why she put the Vaseline over so she couldn't track what she was doing or looking at.
So you can see it clearly, but you just can't see the eyes.
It's like
you could see that there's like a shadow of the person's there listening or taking the test. You can't see that the eyes are like sitting here highlighting stuff, and you can track the eyeballs. But that's regardless of the situation. For me, it's like you said, you're writing reports, pronunciation, punctuation, grammatical issues, whatever. It's crazy. When I took the test, and even now studying, I'm looking at the answer key. My abilities to put the paragraphs, right, was paragraph rearrangement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I always do great at that.
Which is crazy. Last time I was really good at it. Now I'm like, I can't fucking figure it out. Now I'm on it. I'm getting every single one of them right. I don't know why, but when it comes down to the actual reading comprehension part, I'm like, C. Let's see if it sticks. Wrong. And I'm like, and then I would ask my wife. I'd put it up on the big screen, and I go, babe, can you fucking read this and tell me what you think? She's like, D. Bing, D. I'm like, what the? How did you do that? So it's got to be like. There's got to be something I'm good at reading comp. So
what's that?
I said I'm good at reading comp.
You're good at reading comp?
I tell people reading comp it is what it is, right? Mm-hmm. Reading comp, you're reading a paragraph, and then they're giving you the answer.
You can't look too far into it.
The problem with reading comp, and yes, that's one thing. Sometimes they actually do want you to dig in because there's some questions where it doesn't blatantly give you the answers, right, and you kind of got to read in between the lines as to what they're giving you.
So a lot of times what I did for my reading comp on the test, and I did fairly well, is I would have, before I actually read the question,
read the answers.
I read the answers, and I said, okay, these are my answers. What? Because usually you have 2 alike and that 2 aren't. Usually 2 alike, the 2 that's trying to get you to go for it. And then I would go through and say, okay, I read a few sentences ago. Does this sound like it's leading to anything? Like, look at this. And I would put a question mark. Like, I marked my paper up completely. And that's helped me go through for reading comp, because it's completely, I already know what it's having me look for, versus reading, coming to an idea in my head, and going to the questions going, well, I fucking know where I'm here. Now what do I do? Now I have to go through and retrain my brain to rethink, as I'm reading. I don't know if you have anything similar to that, but
for reading comp for me is I do read the answers first, and then I go read the paragraph, and then I read the answers again and see what kind of like stands out. I do a lot of no matter what kind of questions, rating comp, supervision, law, this the throwaways.
Yep.
Those are the first.
Strike them out.
I eliminate. Process of elimination.
Yep.
If I don't need to read it, you're out. Like, that's it. I cross it.
Yep.
So I don't look back at that answer, unless now I'm having issues with the other answers. Then I might backtrack and look at that answer again. But I do the throwaways. I do a lot of like elimination process. Yep. To me, it helps me a lot.
Yeah.
And as to what I would implement in the promotion process, I would add an interview process. Just because you're a good test taker doesn't mean you're a good interviewer, right?
So you guys don't interview?
No.
See, we do. So off our test, you then have to go in for at least 2 interviews.
We do that in the detective interview. We do oral interview for detectives, and they have
not for sergeants.
Not for sergeants.
So for the lieutenant, you have to go first line supervisor.
So there's no, but and then again, there's no interviews.
Let me just correct myself. I do believe detective sergeants and detective lieutenants also do have an interview process. I don't know though. I don't.
They probably do.
Yeah, I think they do.
But I would say
specialized unit,
regular patrol
detective sergeant, not just straight out sergeant.
Yeah, I would say,
not straight up. Yeah, not straight up sergeant.
I would say regular patrol bosses. No, you take the test, you score whatever you score. If you get called, you get called. Once you get called, you go to supervisor school.
That's
for 2 weeks or whatever the time is.
I think it's a month.
And then if you get selected. And what I mean, if you get selected is if they have the need for more supervisors, you get selected from that pool of people that already went to that school. And that's it. Like, there's no interviewing. So I would add an interview process because I think you would actually get rid of a lot of fucking brain dead bosses that are on certain jobs. And I'm not saying here because I don't speak to many people and I don't know many people. Like, so I can't tell you that we have a problem. I don't know that we do or that we don't. I'm just saying you see it everywhere where even in the military, even though we have a certain process, there's still people that you're like, how are you here, bro?
Yeah.
A vegetable on a fucking hospital bed could do a better job than you can. You know what I'm saying?
2 things. There's someone in our job who both of you know this guy. I won't say his name, but he said, you were in the military? And then he goes, how the fuck did we ever win a war? You know who that is? do you know who that is by any chance?
We can talk about it later. But
so that person said that, and even adding on what Angel said, there was somebody who I consider a good leader, and he was a boss too, not on our job. Aaron from Relentless Defender. I called him up one day with my frustration, right? And I said, "This is the way how do you guys do this for your supervisors?" He goes, "Listen, man, I'm gonna tell you like this: if you don't take that fucking test." He goes, you will never be able to put in your 2 cents on why this doesn't work. He goes, you have to be willing to take that test, see how you do, and take it again and again and again. Because one day if somebody asks for your opinion on why this test doesn't work, then you'll be able to at least, no pun intended, have a leg to stand on, right? But right now, if I hadn't taken that test, I scored okay. I scored an over 80, right? For me, that's pretty good. For somebody who's not the best test taker or whatever, not bad. I can always do better, which I'll take it again in June and see how well I do versus last time, But again, correct me because I don't recall. How many years do you have to be on the job before you can take it?
Ours is 3. Ours is 2, but you can't get hired until 3.
Yeah, I think it's 3.
So let's call it 3.
You have to be on the job at least 3 years.
So let's call it 3 years, right?
But I think you can't get made
until 5. So
it's something like that.
So you take a 3 because it makes sense, right? You'd have to wait. At 5 years, if you're a good test taker, with 25 years old, you could be a fucking sergeant, leading people on patrol and doing your thing and moving up the ranks. Right?
But again, I don't think age has anything to do with it. You could be a 25-year-old stud.
Well, that's what I'm
saying. And
then
you could be a 25-year-old fucking dumbass.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So to me, there's too many variables to where it's like, all right, think about us when we were in the military. We went in at a young age. We were 17, 18 years old. What the fuck do you know about life? What the fuck do you know about leading people? Right? Maybe you've gone through shit in your life, and that would be phenomenal. But I never had a 19-year-old staff sergeant fucking telling me, hey, you should do things this way, you should do things that way. Right? I'm just equating it to a 5-year sergeant. Right? There are 5-year sergeants who are non-egotistical, who are good at test taking, and have a good potential to be a good leader. Right? If they allow themselves to be trained and coached by other supervisors who've been around a little time as well.
But that's the thing. You don't have to learn from other supervisors. And that's where the ego comes into place. A regular police officer can teach a supervisor something.
100%.
And that's the thing. You have to be open to learning from everyone.
Yes.
Just because you're a police officer doesn't mean that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You probably have more experience than that supervisor.
Yeah.
So you as a police officer could probably bring something to the table that that supervisor cannot. So you or me as a supervisor and you as a police officer, I can learn a thing or two from you. But you have to set your ego aside and actually open your ears, close your mouth, and don't take things personal. And that's where the ego comes into play. People take things personal. I may give you an advice as a police officer. Doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about. And I joined the military when I was 26. So all like Matthias was young. When I came in, I went to basic training. I did my technical school, which is learning the trade that you're going to do in the military. But now I'm 26, 27, and I have somebody that's 19, 20, that's already a sergeant that they got in and they're doing pretty good for themselves and are moving up because they're studs, right? And I have these people telling me what to do. How do you think my ego felt when I have somebody that's way younger than me? And I'm already a supervisor in the civilian world.
Right.
Like I was already a supervisor in the company that I was working at. I've been a supervisor for a long time. So I was already a supervisor. Now I have a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, 22-year-old telling me what to do.
It's tough.
It's tough, like, right? And that's where the ego comes into play. But if you shut up and open your ears, you might learn a thing or two. Because, yes, I may have experience, but I don't have that military experience that individual had. I'm new, fresh off the street. This guy knows what he's talking about because he's been doing this for 3, 4, 5 years.
Right.
Again, you have 5-year bosses, and then you have 20-year cops that have been police officers for 20, 25 years. And now this boss that's been on this job for 5 years is now telling this 20, 25-year-old veteran on this job what to do. There could be a conflict with the egos because now that 25-year police officer that's been here for 25 years, 20 years, whatever, 15 years, 10 years, if I've been here 2 years, 3 years more than you, 4 years more than you, I think I got it on you, right?
I don't know.
I got to listen to somebody that's been here for 5 years telling me what to do. It's like, and the ego comes into play a lot. And that's where sometimes you have even the generational gaps can contribute to the ego point. Because now you're older, like me, like I said, in the military, I was 26. I was older, but then I have a 21, 22-year-old telling me what to do, 19-year-old telling me what to do because he outranks me.
I saw that in the military all the time. You know, for officers, I think it's the same for Air Force. I'm assuming to be an officer in the military, you have to go to college. You have to have at least a bachelor's degree. All right. So you have a staff sergeant who's been a staff sergeant for 25 years. You know, I had a staff sergeant in my old battalion who I guess something happened in Iraq and they messed up a grade coordinate or something, dropped the mortar and killed some civilians. So he got bumped down in grade. So he was like a 25-year staff sergeant. 25 years, you should be doing pretty damn good, like sergeant major, you know, something very high up. But he knew his consequences. And
unless you have something like that happen to you.
Right. So he was a 25-year staff sergeant. You would have a 21-year-old second lieutenant graduated right out of high school coming in like, I'm an officer, you're going to salute me and stuff. Yeah. I always hated that. I was like, holy shit, you're going to college, you party, you did your thing. That's the ego thing, right? You got a 25-year staff sergeant.
Yes, it's an ego thing.
Yeah. You had a 25-year staff sergeant. And for me, looking on the outside, I'm like, you don't fucking know shit, sir, you know, because you're like, you got this 21-year-old yelling at a 25-year staff sergeant who's fucking been in 5 wars and has seen it all and whatever. It was a great leader, and I would fucking go anywhere with this guy. And all this guy had to do, like he said, just shut the fuck up and listen to his staff sergeant. He wouldn't salute him for a while. Again, ego thing, call it what you want. But we saw it because this guy came in like this, like strong, you know, second lieutenant, just out of college, and then all of a sudden when he humbled himself down, he ended up being a fucking great. I think now he's a lieutenant colonel, you know, because it's been about 14, 15 years. Of course,
they learn.
You know,
yeah, they learn.
But we learn, right? I think we learn. My next question would be how to implement something different. You said. My second question would be, you have somebody you love, right? A coworker, ourselves included, and I'm dealing with some ego issues that you can see on the outside. How do you address them as somebody who's, you know, a friend? What would you say to your friend? What would you say to me if I was dealing with some ego, you know, issues?
So we actually had this very similar question when I went through my interview process, but it was for disciplinary.
Great.
How would you discipline somebody that, you know, that you used to work with? Because my department, right? It's not like you guys, we got 7 precincts, detailed units. Mine is
what you see is what you get, right?
1 headquarters, right? 1 precinct, 60 cops. So I know everybody there, right? I know their families. I know everybody. And my answer to the question was very simple, and they kind of looked at me. I was like, if they are truly my friend, you have a separation of church and state. When we're at state, when we're at work, we're at work. Doesn't mean I'm going to be an asshole, but listen, if I got to pull you in because you're doing something fucking stupid, we're going to have a conversation. And very much how we talk to each other is it's very honest. Listen, man, what's going on with you? Why is your ego getting in the way of me talking to you or of taking commands from somebody younger than you or somebody older? Why are you having this problem? Because it usually most likely means there's something else going on. And then that's where the conversation ensues. Like you said, I plan for it never to be a good conversation because anytime you have these conversations with people, especially somebody close in this setting, usually you're going to butt heads to a point at first. And before I ever even think about disciplinary, I let it sit. Then we'll have another conversation. I'll let it sit for a week. Hey, come on in. How you doing? You have some time to kind of simmer down, to just think about what we talked about. Yeah, fuck you. Okay, this is how we're going to do this. Cool. Your respect for me as a friend should be higher, being that I'm your supervisor and a friend, in my opinion, because you understand the leg I'm coming from in the spot I'm in, and that you're putting me in this spot. Now, as a supervisor too, it's not looking at going, yeah, I'm your boss, you're my friend, I don't care, right? It's still having that compassion. It's putting that ego to the side, saying, listen, let's have a talk. Let's deal with this. And again, it's really how the second conversation goes is the one I primarily focus on, not the first one.
All right. So I had something, yours was a scenario. Mm-hmm. Mine was actually legitimately a thing. So you guys know that I was in that state active duty mission, mm-hmm. right? When I got there was this sergeant. I'm going to try not to mention his name. I'm pretty sure it's going to slip up at some point.
Roger.
No, he was great freaking guy. Great guy, like to the point where I was like, yo, this dude is legit. Mm-hmm. Army guy, 11 Bravo. For those of you that don't know, it's infantry. Yeah. So, infantry guy. So I had a lot of respect for him. He outranked me at the time, right? Now, I'm going to fast forward that story. He ends up going to a police department in Nassau County, not Nassau County, but in Nassau County. Yeah. Your boy works there, and you hear me asking about him all the time. Yeah. So we end up going on the COVID mission. You knew I was the NCOIC. I was the non-commissioned officer in charge of that mission. We started that mission from the ground up. There was nothing there when we started that mission, and we were doing vaccinations. We were I think the second biggest or the third biggest vaccination site in New York.
Second biggest because that was the one we were working the detail on.
So he ends up coming to my site because we were short on personnel. Again, my boy, we always kept in touch. When I became a police officer, he was the one that pinned my shield on me. Mm-hmm. Like, he came to the graduation, and that's how remember they told you it had to be family members? That's how high I held them, or I still hold them in that high regard. And he came to my site. I outrank him now, so he's under me. He needed a day off. And he's putting pressure on me to give him the day off. I was like, give me a second. You need to do your due diligence because the reason you're here is because we have a shortage of personnel. Ask in the group chat if anybody would change their pass day with you.
Right.
Do the legwork. Like, don't come to me with the problem. Do the legwork. Find out if anybody can change with you. If nobody can switch, then I'll try to see if I can force somebody to switch with you. I said, but it's not guaranteed. Again, the problem and the reason why you're here is because he came in like the second or third wave of people that they sent me because we were always short. There's a lot that went on that mission that was just fucking stupid, but whatever. So he calls me one time because I still hadn't given him the day off. And he's like, oh, you've become a fucking asshole since you got promoted. I was like, brother, man, listen, now you're getting personal. Yeah. I said, listen, I love you like a brother. There's something that I'm not going to take lightly, and it's you offending me. I said, I told you to try to find somebody. You didn't find somebody. You told me you didn't find somebody. I said, give me some time. Right. I understand you need a day, but you also need to understand my predicament. I am short on personnel, and these people keep asking for more and more and more. We can never meet the goal line because the goal line was always moving. So if you tell me you need 5 people today, and then I give you 5 people today, tomorrow you tell me you need 10, now I'm short 5.
Right.
Then I find 10, now you're asking for 15. The next day, so it's every day. It was changing. So I never had the amount of people that we required because they were always changing the number. And it's not like they were going backwards. They went to 15 and then they came back to 5. No. They kept going up and up and up because they needed more and more and more. So I'm like, I'm in a predicament right now. Well, I just told my wife, how you become a dick since you got promoted. I was like, wow, that's extremely fucked up on all kinds of levels.
Right.
I was like, I hope your wife can speak some sense into you. You can call me when you calm down, and then we might have a conversation. Go ahead and talk to your wife again, and I hope that she puts you in your place because she's only listening to your side of the story, and I'm guessing you're painting me as the fucking worst person ever. He called me back. He's like, listen, bro, I'm sorry. We're friends. I was like, bro, listen, I'm trying to help you, but you're making it very difficult. As a friend, you're making it difficult for me to keep that friendly respect for you,
right,
and that brotherly respect that I have for you. And then as a supervisor, now as a leader, then you're making it even more difficult because now people are looking at me as if I'm trying to have favoritism because you're my friend. And the way you're acting in front of other people are starting to take it like, oh, that's because that's First Sergeant Blandino's boy.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're putting me in a fucking shitty predicament right now. And you're quote unquote my friend, and we've been friends for so many years. You should be looking at this from a different lens. And it was all ego on his part.
Yes.
And it was more of me on the leadership part being like, you need to calm down. You need to take a breather. Like, and yes, there was favoritism in the sense that had this been somebody that I didn't know, it wouldn't have gone that way. But this is somebody that I held in very high regards, and I saw as a brother, as a friend, and it was like, oh, you're a fucking asshole, and since you become a dick since you got promoted, it's like, when you were my supervisor, I gave you all the respect in the world. I never stepped over that line. One, because I thought you were a good supervisor. Two, because I thought you were a good friend.
Yeah.
Now the roles are reversed, and in his mind, his ego didn't let him see past the fact that, oh, now I'm his boss, and you need to do what I tell you to do because. And it's like, no, but that's not how that works. Like, you're here for a reason, and the reason you're here is because I'm short on personnel, and you just want to push your day off, which I understand you need a day off. Let me work it. I had the lieutenant that was the person in charge with me, so she was the officer in charge, the OIC, and she's even telling me like, it's coming across as a little bit of favoritism. And I was like, I know how it's coming across.
Yeah.
So I start showing her messages like, look, this dude needs the day off. Like, I don't know how to
approach it
in the sense that it's not favoritism. Like, he needs a day off, and he had already requested before he even got here. And now he got here, so now he's getting screwed out of this day off that he had already requested because he got transferred to another site. So I said, it may come across as favoritism, but I promise you, there's no favoritism right now. Like, I'm just trying to help somebody out that got screwed and got sent here because we needed the personnel. So like the lieutenant started to see it like, all right, yeah, I can see it. Like, I can see how it got mixed up in the transfer and whatnot. So we actually ended up giving him the day off. But it was like, brother, like, you're supposed to be my friend.
Right, you lit a fire when you didn't have it.
You're supposed to be my friend, and you let your ego get to your head, and you let your ego get in the way of a friendship, and you got disrespectful. This is a guy that used to call me at 2, 3 in the morning talking about, I'm having suicidal thoughts. What can I do? What should I be doing? That's the kind of friendship we had.
Right. Yeah.
We haven't spoken much since the COVID mission because I'm the kind of person I kind of distance myself.
Right.
And you got
motherfucker will shut you out. I know.
You know how I am.
I know.
You become a fucking castaway.
Yeah.
You fucking become Tom Hanks and fucking castaway. Like, you're on your own fucking island. You could get the fuck away from me.
Yeah.
And again, it was more of the I don't think that the apology was genuine, right? And he put me in a bad predicament because of his ego. He let his ego get the best of him, and it was like, bro, like, we're friends, and on top of us being friends, like you said, now I'm your supervisor. So now you're screwing me on both ends because now you're screwing up a friendship that we've had for so long, and now you're screwing up in a sense that now you're making me
workplace
possibly do something on the workforce that you're gonna perceive now as I'm the fucking worst human being ever because I didn't hook you up.
Yeah.
And that's not how that should have worked. But it's the ego part, and that's where sometimes having friends at work and you getting promoted it's hard.
Yes.
It's hard.
There's two words, I don't know how we're doing with time, but there's 2 words that we always come back to, right? talk about awareness, which is what we talk about on the podcast, right? Awareness of everything, anxiety, depression, PTSD, like you said. As a matter of fact, one episode, I think you might have said PTSDs, depressions, anxieties.
Probably.
I was kind of laughing at that. But we talk about awareness and we talk about vulnerability, right? Being vulnerable in this situation to say, I had a moment of weakness, right? An ego problem. I held myself to a higher regard when I shouldn't have. You know, I think those are all important things that we talk about in these settings, especially with our closest friends, because I know that I've learned a lot from both of you, you know, and it does become genuine when you hear it from somebody who loves you. Hey, man, I know you don't see it this way, but this is what it looks like right now, right? What you're doing is wrong. Again, I would have liked to see something different with Angel and his friend that was taken in a different context, right? Like, hey, man, you know I got nothing but love for you. I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to work this out. But if I can't,
I tried.
Right, I'm saying, but if I can't, like, I'll do my best. And the best that he could have probably done, again, who are we to judge? Money quarterback, I don't know. The best that he could have done, I'm like, hey, man, I completely understand. I know you'll do your best, you know, to give me this day off. If you can't, I completely understand.
But just like his wife, now you guys are only hearing my side of the story. His wife only heard his side of the story. And his wife was like, oh, yeah, he's an asshole. He's a dick or whatever. But all you're hearing is what he's telling you, just like you guys are hearing. So now you guys are probably thinking he's a fucking asshole.
No, not really.
But you're only hearing my side of the story.
Not really. You know what it is? It takes maturity. It takes maturity because I know I've been that guy. I have been him. We'll call him X, right? Just like Jerry did that one time. We'll call him X. I have been that guy where it's like, instead of, you know, backing the fuck off and giving your boy some room, you're kind of drowning him and like expectations. Again, we want to be held to a higher regard. And I that takes a huge amount of maturity on your end when you put the uniform on, you know, to be a different person. That's just the role. It comes with it. And I tell the recruits all the time, listen, we're on the drill floor. I'm one guy. When I'm in the classroom, I'm another. You're going to get the real side of me in the classroom because we got a lot of time to, you know, explore the topics that we're teaching and questions, and you want to be available. But when you're in formation, everything starts with discipline. It's not just discipline to stay still at attention. You guys know that. We set an attention for how many hours in formation we were there. We do it in the military. It's not the standing still and the attention is not in reference to just, you know, behaviors. It's the willingness to do something you know is not easy, but you got to do it anyway because this is what you're going to get. This is what you're going to get. By me going, Chris, jump, you jumped, great. I can answer questions later. Why did you tell me to jump later on? Or why? If I'm like, Chris, jump, why? Boom, now you just got shot. Hey, that's your fucking problem. You didn't listen. I gave you a command. I gave you something. Why didn't you listen? Because you're my boy. You're supposed to look out for me. I've never really understood that. You know, it's very difficult to be a boss and a friend in one setting. I've seen it in numerous occasions. But I think really the vulnerability aspect is huge. Being able to go, you know what, I fucked up. I've been working on myself. I know you two have been working on yourselves. And in reality, all I want to do with this podcast is just shed a little light on all of us too, you know, because I don't want people to look at us and go, these motherfuckers are just judging everybody and themselves. Hey, listen, I'm a continuous train of, you know, evolution.
I'm fucking judging you.
Hey, I'm continuously trying to grow. You read, I was just like that little thing I was showing you before on anxiety. It's all stuff you already knew. You all told me that, but you didn't quite have it in a box, so to speak, right? You couldn't give it to me the way I needed to see it. Sometimes you need a little bit of time. So all these things are, again, like learning curves, but we still got to put ourselves in check. We can't always expect other people to put us in check. It probably feels better to do your own work and to work on yourself, and people will recognize that. People will recognize, like, wow, this dude's like really backed off. You know, I have a supervisor on my job, which I had a little bit of problem with. I came to him about it. I had to back the fuck off because at the end of the day, he is still the boss, and I'm not that fucking guy. I'm never going to be that guy. I shouldn't be that guy. I have been that guy, but I shouldn't be that guy that questions anything from whoever the fuck. It's not up to me. Right. If that guy's wearing stripes, I learned to follow orders in the military, right? I shouldn't deviate from that. I should be, you know, respectful. I should be disciplined enough to go, you know what? If I want to see a change, then fucking take the test. Yeah. Study. Do better. I shouldn't be the one barking like, who the fuck is he? He has no life experience. He's younger than me. That's what this whole evolution just came to, is learning how to just recognize. I didn't say be perfect. I just said recognize, you know, your behaviors, how you're treating those around you. You know, if he's the boss, I don't give a shit why he's the boss. Something happened that I can't see, that somebody instilled this power in him, you know, that I'm going to have to listen. You know, and if you don't like it, you know what? Then obviously you're not being a good soldier. Yep. You know, and it sounds cheesy as shit, but it's true. It's tough.
Well, in order to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower first.
Yeah. Heard that a lot.
Right? So there's a lot of people that want to be leaders but are shitty followers. And that's exactly how you're going to be as a leader. You're going to be a shitty fucking leader.
And that's a lot of it. That's the ego thing. If you can't follow somebody, it's because your ego is too high, or I'm not doing that. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to do, which I think, again, as police, and that is something I deal with, is, hey, this is what we're going to do. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, well, this isn't a conversation.
Yeah.
That's even like you almost put it towards your kids. I say it all the time. I go, when you're a supervisor in law enforcement, it's like dealing with your kids again, right? My 4-year-old doesn't necessarily have an ego, or my 5-year-old, but it's, hey, do this. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, well, this isn't a discussion, right? But an adult who says, I'm not going to do that, it's because their ego is high. But it's the same concept.
I was going to ask you, that was going to be my next question. You stay on that? I was going to ask, because both of you being parents and being leaders, can you just give us your perspective or your opinion, right, your personal opinion on how do we alleviate that ego a little bit starting at home? Because I think a lot of us as adults are trying to figure out how we work on our egos as adults. But how can we help our kids, right? How can we help our kids on the family front, right, at the home front, recognize some of these things so they don't have to maybe work so hard later on in life? Or do you think that is just something that is inevitable, that you're going to have to deal with it and hit your head against the wall 300 times before you get the concept of, hey, you know?
I think me personally, everyone is different, right? Everyone's their own person. Because you can have one of your kids, right? You have two, I have 3. You can have one of your kids, they're going to say, hey, go do this. And they're just blindly going to go and do what you told them to do because you told them to do it.
My firstborn.
And then you're going to go tell another one of your kids, hey, go do this. But why?
Yeah. Right, you want to say why? He's going to go,
that was me. I was the middle child.
What I'm trying to say is that you got to know, at home, you got to know your kids, right? And you got to know who they are and their personalities. Yes. Same thing happens at work. Yep. When you're a leader at work, you have to know your people and you have to know their personalities and what gets them going. Because maybe I talk to you nicely and I'm like, hey, Matthias, can you pick that thing up for me, please? And you're like, sure. Then I'll go, hey, Chris, can you pick that thing up for me?
Why?
And Chris just looks at me. And then Chris needs something more like, hey, didn't I fucking tell you to go fucking pick that thing up? Yeah. And then he goes and does it. Because not everyone responds the same. Now I can say it the second way I said it to Chris. And Chris would look at me like, why are you talking to me like that? Like, you could just tell me to go do it. Yeah. And I'll go, you know what I'm saying? Right. You have to know your people. You have to know what gets them going, what buttons to push in a healthy way. Because you can push buttons in a healthy way. There's people that push buttons in an unprofessional way to get you going.
In an unhealthy way.
By doing that, do you think you're striking his ego? Hey, Chris, I told you to fucking go do that. Do you think you're kind of like addressing his ego a little bit when you do that?
And again, that comes with knowing your people. Because it might be that his ego is so fucking big that he thinks that nobody can tell him what to do.
Right.
So that's how when you get into know your people,
kind of check.
Some people say it's not good to get to know your people on a personal level. I like to get to know. I love to get to know my people on a personal level. I want to know if you have a family. If you have family, I want to know if you have kids. If you have a wife. If you have a boyfriend. If you have a girlfriend. I want to know. Like that's who I am. Like I want to know because I want you to know about me too, and I want to be able to share with you, and I want you to be able to share with me because when you make those connections, the respect goes sky high.
Well, and so does your teamwork.
Because you get, of course, the productivity, everything's up because your people know that you actually care.
Yeah.
And the ego thing kind of goes out the window. I work with somebody that I know has a huge ego. And I'm guessing he thinks I have a huge ego. We get along just fine.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know how he is. It's just knowing your people. And again, I'm not a boss. I know who I work with. I know who everyone is. At least the people that I work around. Like I don't know everyone in the precinct. Like
right.
I keep to myself. You guys know that. Unless you work around me, like I don't know you, nor do I really care to know you.
No,
I could back you on a call. Like I can back you, but I don't care to know much about people.
But I think that is a huge thing because I think one of the not problems, but one of the very common mistakes that parents made is the ego. I'm your parent. I told you to do that. Your ego's too high. Yeah. It's a fucking child. And I was guilty of this morning. I got mad at my son because I was trying to help him do something. I was like, I'm tired, man. I don't want to. I'm tired of arguing. right? And I hurt his feelings. And I came back in. I'm like, listen, man, I'm tired. I've been working on midnights. A lot of times I'm trying to help you. You are arguing with me. But you're also 5 years old.
Low expectations.
Let me put my ego to the side. Let me put my standards to the side because you're 5 years old.
The 5-year-old boss, right?
Yeah, I know.
But a lot of parents aren't able to do that. A lot of people aren't able to do that, which is, like you said, being talked to, being told, hey, you fucked up. Yeah. I looked at myself in the mirror and said, you fucked up. And I said, I hate myself. All right, let me go make this right. But that's part of it, right? I think that goes just in the same thing as, again, taking it back to leadership and being a boss, is just because you're a boss doesn't mean people are going to follow. Doesn't mean that everyone gets spoken to the same way. And that's something I do the same thing. There's some people I'll straight up I'm not patient with. It's you're going to go do this
because that's what it requires.
It's just going to take all the arguments out. It's going to take everything, and they're just going to go and do it. And there's other people I'm like, hey man, listen, I need you to go do this, and this is why. Okay.
But that's getting to know your people. Correct. And you know who to address and how to address them.
Correct. But your kid, like you said, your kids are the same. My firstborn, hey buddy, we're going to go do this. And he's going to get upset. Listen, I get it. But we got to do what we got to do. And he's getting older to start to understand, but it's how you talk to them. My secondborn, go do this.
Ta-da!
Yeah. No, Mike, this isn't a discussion, dude. Go pick it up. Stomps his way over, comes back and gives it to me. But that's his, like you said, that is literally how you get him to respond. Yeah. And then afterwards, I'm like, hey, bud, listen, I know you may not have liked me demanding you to go do this. But how many times did I ask you nicely?
And they are born with their personalities.
Correct.
Just so you know.
You're not going to change that.
You're not going to change. They're born like that. Yeah. Like I have my middle one. We used to do ponytails on her when she was little. She never liked ponytails. She would always take it off. She always loved being barefoot. To this day, she doesn't like a fucking ponytail. What was the last time you saw her with a ponytail? Think about it. No, never. You've never seen her with a ponytail. No. Since she was a little girl, she would take the ponytail off. She'd like her hair loose. Since a little girl. Yep. Always been the same. They are born like that, and they are going to stay like that. And you can try to steer them. They are who they are.
I guess she's not joining the military or the police department, right?
Just walk. No. She could have like short hair. They could cut the hair. She just needs to loose.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, it's getting to know your people and getting to know your kids. Like you have to understand. Not all your kids are going to answer to the same thing. They're not going to get the same response. Just like it's like you said, it's like being a leader is being like a parent. You got to know your people. You got to know what gets them going, what gets them motivated. It's about motivation and them wanting to follow you and what are you doing to be a good leader.
And I think being a subordinate is almost the same, right? Like a lot of people don't, like you said, you don't like being told what to do. But if you're a subordinate, like you talked about, the guy giving you commands, and you have to be like, all right, well, you are the boss. You need to kind of take a step back and go, that person does outrank me. That person, this is it. And as long as it's not a safety issue or a legality issue, right, do it. Tuck your tail, do it. Afterwards, if you want, hey, boss, we have a talk. Because
it also is the message and the way you're sending the message.
Correct.
And I think that's why he was having the most issues with the way the boss was sending the message.
No, absolutely.
And again, that's getting to know your people. Right. I'll bring it right back to getting to know your people. Because maybe that boss would speak to me like that, and maybe I would do it. But maybe he speaks to him like that, and Matthias is more on the, why are you talking to me like this? Like, you can speak to me like a normal human being, and I'll get it done. Right?
But I think, again, that's my point. It's almost like this, the subordinate or the person taking the command is the same thing. Know who's talking to you. You know that guy's going to be a dick. We have to learn. It takes time to not take that offense. But all right. Which I've had to do, too, with my supervisors. Hey, go fucking do this. I'm like, yeah, okay. And some people are like, oh, can you believe he speaks to people? I'm like, oh, what are you going to do, man? You're not going to change the way he speaks to you. It's how he speaks. Do I love it? No. But I got to the point where he's like, you're a fucking idiot. I'm like, that 10-4, thanks. Appreciate it. Right?
My paycheck come in today?
Right. Like you just find a way to function with it versus I put my ego to the side. How dare you disrespect me? Or, why you talk to me like that? Because I'm not going to change it. So either I can get upset about it every time, or I can go, that 10-4, thanks, boss. I'll see you later. Just don't fire me. That's all I ask. Just don't fire me.
You're an asshole. I'm an asshole. Let's just put our assholes to the side, and figure it out.
That's where the ego comes into play.
Yeah, man. Definitely got to do some homework on the ego. I think we could all definitely work, work to better ourselves. So I think it went pretty well. I think the chat went open to hopefully people going, all right, is this an ego thing that I could work on myself? Because I think unfortunately we all got a little you in yourself that wants to be better and do better, and it takes time, it takes work, and I'm hoping we continue to put that work out there.